Richard Holloway smiled as he set the poisoned glass of water on the silver tray outside Vincent Callahan's bedroom and whispered to the empty hallway, "Sleep well, old friend. By morning, everything you built will finally be mine." He had waited 20 years for this night. He had bribed the guards, disabled the cameras, and rewritten every schedule. The most feared man in New York was about to die in his own bed, and no one would ever know. No one, except a housemaid, nobody bothered to notice. If you love a story where the person everyone ignores becomes the one who changes everything, subscribe to the channel right now and stay with me all the way to the end. And do me a favor, comment the name of the city you are watching from so I can see just how far this story travels tonight. Clara Bennett had learned a long time ago that the safest thing a poor woman could do inside a rich man's house was become invisible. For 6 months she had cleaned the floors of the Callahan estate without ever once being seen. Not really seen. Men in expensive suits walked past her as if she were a piece of furniture. Women dripping in diamonds handed her their coats without ever meeting her eyes. She had grown used to it. In truth, she had come to prefer it. In a house where powerful people arranged the deaths of their enemies over glasses of brandy, being invisible was the closest thing a person could get to being safe. But being invisible had one strange side effect that no one at the Callahan estate ever suspected. When you are invisible, you see everything. Clara saw the way Richard Holloway's jaw tightened whenever Vincent laughed. She saw how the guards changed their patterns whenever certain visitors arrived. She saw which rooms went silent when she approached, and which ones grew louder to cover a secret. She noticed the small things, the misplaced objects, the changed routines, the faint smells that clung to the air after a conversation ended. Her mother used to say she had eyes in the back of her soul. Clara had always thought it was just a mother's kind exaggeration. On the night everything changed, it would turn out to be the truest thing anyone had ever said about her. The storm had been building over the city since early evening, and by midnight the rain hammered the windows of the 3rd floor like it was trying to get inside. Clara moved through the upper hallway with her cart, wiping down the banisters, her sneakers silent on the thick carpet. She was tired. Her back ached. She wanted nothing more than to finish and go home to her small apartment in Brooklyn, where the rent was late and the heat barely worked, but where at least nobody watched her. Then she reached the corner near Vincent Callahan's private wing, and she stopped. Something was wrong. She could not explain it at first. She just felt it, the way you feel a room hold its breath. Her eyes swept the hallway, cataloging everything the way they always did. The 2 guards who stood outside Vincent's door every single night were gone. Clara had never once in 6 months seen that spot empty. Those men did not leave their post for anything. She had watched one of them stand there with a fever so bad he could barely keep his eyes open, because leaving meant losing his job, or worse. And now, on the one night when a storm knocked out half the city's power, both of them had simply vanished. Her heart began to beat a little faster. Then she noticed the door. Vincent Callahan's bedroom door was always locked. Always. It was a rule everyone in the house understood without ever being told. And yet tonight it stood open a few inches, just enough for a sliver of darkness to spill into the hallway. Clara's hands went cold. Every instinct she had spent a lifetime developing told her the same thing. Walk away. Turn your cart around, go back down the stairs, clock out, and forget you ever came up here. People who noticed things in this house had a way of disappearing. She actually turned to leave. And that was when she saw the glass. On a small silver tray beside the door sat a single glass of water. Nobody had touched it. It sat there catching the dim hallway light, perfectly still. And rising off of it, so faint that anyone else would have walked right past it, was a smell. Clara froze. It was a bitter smell. Almond, but wrong. Sharper. It pricked at the back of her memory, dragging up something she had heard years ago when her mother worked the night shift at a hospital in Queens. Her mother had come home one morning, pale and shaken, and told her about a patient who had been poisoned. She had described the smell, that exact smell, and she had said something Clara never forgot. When you smell that, baby, somebody already decided somebody else was going to die. Clara stood in the hallway with the rain roaring against the windows and her whole body screaming at her to run. Instead, she pushed the door open. The bedroom was dark, lit only by the flicker of the storm outside, and there, in an enormous bed, lay Vincent Callahan, the most powerful man in the New York underworld, the man whose name made grown men lower their voices. He was not moving the way a sleeping man moves. His chest rose and fell in short, ragged pulls, each breath sounding like it was being dragged through a straw. A thin sheen of sweat covered his face. His lips had gone a strange, dusky color. Clara had seen enough sickness in her life to know exactly what she was looking at. This man was not asleep. This man was dying. For one heartbeat, she thought about all the things Vincent Callahan had reportedly done. The rumors, the stories the other staff whispered about the people who crossed him, and a small, ugly voice in the back of her mind said, "Let him die. He is not your problem. Nobody would ever blame you." Then her mother's voice rose up louder than that ugly one. "You save who you can, Clara. You worry about the rest later." She dropped her rag and ran to the bed. "Sir," she said, shaking his shoulder. "Mr. Callahan, wake up, wake up." He did not respond. His breathing hitched, stumbled, caught again. Clara grabbed the phone on his nightstand, the internal line that connected to security, and jabbed the button. Nothing. Dead. The storm, or something worse. She looked around wildly, saw the poisoned glass through the open door, and knew instantly that she could not let him drink another drop of whatever was near him. She darted back into the hallway, snatched the glass off the silver tray, and poured it out into the base of a tall potted plant so no one else could touch it. She did not know it yet, but that single instinct, protecting the evidence by destroying it, was about to make her the most suspicious person in the entire house. She ran back inside and rolled Vincent onto his side the way her mother had taught her, in case he was sick. She loosened the collar of his shirt. She talked to him the entire time, a steady stream of words, because she had read somewhere that a person on the edge could sometimes be pulled back by a voice. "Stay with me, Mr. Callahan. You hear me? You are not doing this. Not tonight. Not on my floor. Breathe. Come on, breathe." His eyelids fluttered. For just a moment, his eyes found hers. They were glassy and unfocused, but they landed on her face, and something in them flickered. Confusion. And then, strangely, a kind of calm. As if even half dead, some part of Vincent Callahan understood that this woman was not there to hurt him. His lips moved. No sound came out. "Don't talk," Clara said. "Just keep breathing. Help is coming." She had no idea if that was true. The phone was dead. The guards were gone. She was alone on the third floor with a dying man and a storm that would not stop, and every second stretched out like it might be his last. Then, from somewhere down below, she heard it. Footsteps. Fast, heavy footsteps pounding up the stairs. For one wild moment, her heart leapt with relief. Help. Finally. The bedroom door burst open, and 3 of Vincent's security men flooded into the room with their weapons drawn. Behind them, moving slower, more deliberate, came a tall, silver-haired man in an immaculate gray suit. Richard Holloway, the head administrator of the entire estate, the man who had served the Callahan family for over 20 years. For a single second, Clara felt saved. Then she saw the way they were all looking at her. She was a housemaid, standing over the bed of the Mafia boss, her hands on his body, the room in disarray. The internal phone off its hook, and the glass of water, the only proof that anything had been wrong, was gone. She had poured it out with her own hands. To every single person in that doorway, Clara Bennett did not look like a rescuer. She looked like the one who did it. "Get away from him!" one of the guards barked, the barrel of his weapon rising toward her chest. Clara raised her hands and stumbled back from the bed. No, you don't understand. He's poisoned. Somebody poisoned him. There was a glass outside the door, and it smelled wrong. I had to get rid of it. I had to make sure he didn't drink it." "Where is this glass?" Richard Holloway asked, and his voice was calm, terribly, perfectly calm. "I poured it out." As soon as the words left her mouth, Clara heard how they sounded. I poured it into the plant, outside. I didn't want anyone to touch it. But you can test it. You can test the dirt. The smell is still, please. He needs a doctor. Right now, he is dying while we stand here." Richard turned his eyes to Vincent, taking in the color of his lips, the shallow rise and fall of his chest. Something passed across the older man's face. To Clara, in that moment, it looked almost like disappointment. She would only understand why much later. "Call the doctor," Richard said quietly to one of the guards, "and hold her." A hand closed around Clara's arm like iron. She did not fight it. She kept her eyes on Vincent, willing him to keep breathing, whispering under her breath, "Stay, stay, stay." The house doctor arrived within minutes, a lean, nervous man named Dr. Owens, who had clearly been pulled from his bed. He took one look at Vincent, and his face went white. He worked fast, checking the pulse, the pupils, the color of the skin, listening to the labored breath. He drew something into a syringe with hands that were not quite steady and pushed it into Vincent's arm. The room went silent, except for the storm and that awful, dragging breathing. Then, slowly, the breathing began to ease. It deepened. The awful color began to leave Vincent's lips. Dr. Owen sat back on his heels and let out a long breath of his own. "He's stabilizing," he said. Then he turned and looked directly at Clara, and his expression was strange. "Whoever found him in time. A few more minutes and there would have been nothing I could do." He hesitated. This was not a heart attack. This was not a stroke. His symptoms are consistent with poisoning, something fast-acting. If he had ingested a full dose, he would already be dead. The words landed in the room like a dropped glass. Every eye turned to Clara. But Clara was watching Richard Holloway. Because in the moment Dr. Owen said the word poisoning, Clara had seen something that no one else in that room had been watching closely enough to catch. She had seen the muscles in Richard's jaw go tight, just for an instant, before his face smoothed back into its calm mask. And she had noticed something else, something small, the kind of small thing only Clara ever noticed. On the cuff of Richard Holloway's pristine gray sleeve, there was a faint white residue, a powder, ground fine, barely visible against the fabric. She had seen that exact residue once already that night. On the rim of the glass, she had poured into the plant. Clara's blood ran cold, and she made a decision that would either save her life or end it. She said nothing. She lowered her eyes, made herself small, made herself invisible again, and she filed that white powder away in the back of her mind where she kept all the dangerous things she noticed. Because she understood, with a clarity that frightened her, that the man who had tried to kill Vincent Callahan was standing 3 feet away from her, running the entire investigation into his own crime. "Take her downstairs," Richard said. "Lock her in the East study. No one speaks to her until Mr. Callahan wakes and decides what to do with her." They led Clara out of the room, and she went without a word. The East study was a cold, book-lined room with a single window that looked out on the storm. They put her in a chair and posted a guard at the door and left her alone with her hammering heart. She sat there for hours, listening to the rain, going over and over what she had seen. The empty post, the open door, the glass, the smell, the white powder on Richard's sleeve. It all fit together into a picture so ugly she could hardly breathe. Someone inside the house had tried to murder Vincent Callahan, not a rival, not an enemy from the outside, someone who had the power to move his guards, disable his cameras, and walk right up to his bedroom door in the middle of the night without being questioned. There were only a handful of people in the world who could do all of that. And the one with the powder on his sleeve was the one now in charge of finding the culprit. Clara understood exactly what that meant for her. She was the perfect person to blame. A poor maid from Brooklyn, a nobody. No family with money, no lawyers, no one who would ask questions if she simply vanished. She had walked into that room and saved a man's life, and it was going to get her killed. She thought about her mother. She thought about the small apartment in Brooklyn and the late rent and the broken heat, and how she would give anything in the world to be there right now instead of here. And then, near dawn, the door opened. It was not a guard. It was Dr. Owens. He slipped inside quickly and closed the door behind him, glancing back over his shoulder like a man who was not supposed to be there. "I only have a minute," he said in a low voice. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth." Clara nodded. her throat too dry to speak. "The glass," Owen said. "You said you smelled something. What did it smell like? Be exact." Clara swallowed. "Bitter. Like almonds, but sharper. Wrong. My mother worked in a hospital. She described that smell to me once. She said when you smell it, somebody already decided somebody was going to die." Dr. Owens closed his eyes for a moment, and when he opened them, they were full of something that looked almost like fear. "That's it," he said quietly. "That's exactly consistent with what I saw. His symptoms, the speed of it. You didn't destroy evidence, young lady. You identified the poison faster than the equipment in my bag could have." He shook his head. "I have been the doctor in this house for 11 years, and I have watched everyone treat you like you were part of the wallpaper. And you are the only person on this entire estate who noticed a man was being murdered." He paused. "Whatever you do, do not tell them what you told me about that smell. Do not tell them what you know. Just wait for Mr. Callahan to wake up, and pray that when he does, he is smart enough to ask the right question." "What question?" Clara whispered. Dr. Owens opened the door a crack, checked the hall, and looked back at her one last time. "He'll ask who found him," he said. "And when he does, tell the truth. Just the truth. Nothing more." And then he was gone. Clara sat alone as the gray light of morning crept across the floor, turning that one sentence over and over in her mind. He'll ask who found him. She did not understand yet why it mattered so much. She only knew that Dr. Owens, a man who had watched this house for 11 years, believed her life depended on the answer to a single question from a man who might not even survive to ask it. The hours crawled. The storm finally broke sometime after sunrise, and a weak, watery light filled the study. Twice, Clara heard raised voices somewhere in the house. Once, she heard footsteps stop outside her door, linger for a long, breathless moment, and then move away. She did not know whose they were. She only knew that in a house full of people who solved problems by making them disappear, she had become a problem. Around noon, the door opened again. This time it was Richard Holloway. He came in alone and shut the door behind him, and he smiled at her the way a man smiles at a stray dog he has decided to be kind to before he does something else entirely. "You must be frightened," he said gently, pulling a chair across from her and sitting down. "You have every right to be. This is a terrible situation. A terrible, terrible thing to happen in our home." He folded his hands. "I want to help you, Clara. May I call you Clara?" She nodded slowly, keeping her face blank, keeping her eyes down, invisible, harmless. "Here is what I think happened," Richard said, his voice soft and reasonable. "I think you were cleaning, as you always do so beautifully, and you found poor Mr. Callahan in distress. And in your panic, you did some things that look, well, they look confusing to the others. Moving the glass, the phone off the hook." He spread his hands sympathetically. "The security men are simple creatures. They see a maid, they see a mess, they jump to conclusions. But I am not a simple man, Clara. I have run this house for 20 years. I understand that things are not always what they appear to be." He leaned forward, and his voice dropped just a little. "So I'm going to ask you to do something for me, for your own protection. When they question you, keep it simple. You found him. You called for help. That is all. Do not mention the glass. Do not mention any smells or powders or anything you think you might have noticed. Those details will only confuse everyone and make you look guilty. Do you understand? The less you say, the safer you will be." He smiled again. "Let me handle the rest. I only want to protect you." And in that moment, Clara understood something with perfect, terrible clarity. Richard Holloway did not know what she had actually seen. He did not know she had smelled the poison. He did not know she had recognized it. And most of all, he did not know she had seen the white powder on his own sleeve. He was here because he was afraid of what a girl who noticed things might have noticed. He was trying to close her mouth before she even knew how dangerous the words in it were. He thought he was managing a frightened, ignorant maid. He had no idea he was sitting across from the one person in the entire house who could destroy him. "I understand," Clara said quietly. "Thank you, Mr. Holloway. I was so scared. I didn't see anything. I just found him and tried to help. That's all. I promise." The relief that flickered across Richard's face was so small that no one else on earth would have caught it. Clara caught it. She caught everything. "Good girl," he said, standing and straightening his jacket. "You just sit tight. This will all be over soon." He walked to the door, and Clara looked at his sleeve one more time. The white powder was gone. He had changed his shirt. Of course he had. He was careful. He was patient. He had waited 20 years. But he had not been careful enough on the one night that a woman nobody ever looked at was cleaning the 3rd floor. The door closed behind him, and Clara let out a long, shaking breath. Her hands were trembling in her lap. She had just lied to the most dangerous man in the house, and she had done it well, and the knowledge of that terrified her almost as much as the poison had. She sat there for another hour, maybe 2. And then, at last, the door opened one final time that day. A guard she had not seen before stood in the doorway. He was younger than the others, and there was something different in the way he looked at her. Not suspicion, something closer to awe. "He's awake," the guard said. Clara's heart stopped. "Mr. Callahan is awake, and he is asking for you." Clara rose slowly from the chair, her legs weak beneath her. "He's asking for me?" she said. "Why?" The young guard looked at her for a long moment, and when he answered, his voice was quiet, almost reverent. "The first thing he said when he opened his eyes," the guard told her, "before he asked what happened, before he asked who did it, before anything else, he looked at all of us standing around his bed, and he asked one question." The guard paused. "He asked, 'Who found me?'" Clara felt the whole world go very still. Dr. Owens had been right. "And what did you tell him?" she whispered. The guard almost smiled. "We told him the truth," he said. "We told him it was the maid, the one nobody ever notices." He stepped aside and held the door open for her, and for the first time in 6 months inside that house, someone looked at Clara Bennett as if she mattered. "He wants to see you, now. And Miss Bennett, I would be careful what you say, but I would also tell him everything, because right now, in this whole house, you might be the only person he can trust." Clara stepped through the doorway on unsteady legs, walking toward the bedroom of a man she had saved, past the very spot where 2 guards should have been standing and were not, past a silver tray that no longer held a glass. Her heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her teeth. Somewhere in this house, Richard Holloway believed he had silenced her. Somewhere in this house, the people who wanted Vincent Callahan dead were already planning their next move. And she, a housemaid from Brooklyn, who had spent her whole life making herself invisible, was about to walk into a room and decide with the words she chose whether she lived or died. She reached the door. She raised her hand, and before she could knock, a deep, rough voice came from inside, weak but unmistakably alive. "Come in," Vincent Callahan said. "I have been waiting to meet the woman who saw what an entire army of men standing outside my door somehow missed." Clara pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was dim and smelled of medicine, and Vincent Callahan lay propped against a mountain of pillows, pale as paper, but with eyes that were sharp and awake and fixed on Clara the moment she crossed the threshold. She had expected him to look weak. He did, but underneath the weakness there was something else, something coiled and watchful, and she understood at once why men lowered their voices when they said his name. "Come closer," he said. His voice was rough, like it had been dragged over gravel, but it did not shake. I do not bite. Not today, anyway. Today, I do not have the strength. Clara took 3 careful steps toward the bed and stopped. She kept her hands folded in front of her. She kept her eyes down, the way she always did, the way 6 months of being invisible had trained her to do. "Look at me," Vincent said. She raised her eyes. He studied her for a long moment, and Clara had the unsettling feeling of being read like a page. "They tell me you found me," he said. "They tell me you were standing over my bed when the guards came in. They tell me the glass of water that should have finished the job was gone, poured out into a plant by your own hands. And they tell me you have no explanation that makes any sense." He tilted his head. "The men in this house think you tried to kill me and lost your nerve. Do you know that?" "Yes, sir," Clara said quietly. "I know that. And what do you say to it?" Clara took a breath. She thought about Richard Holloway's soft voice telling her to keep it simple, to say nothing, to mention no glass and no smell and no powder. She thought about Dr. Owens telling her to tell the truth, just the truth, nothing more. 2 men, 2 warnings, pulling her in opposite directions. And in the space of that single breath, she made her choice, and it was the choice that would decide everything. "I say I saved your life," she said, "and I say the man who tried to take it is still inside this house." The room went very still. Vincent did not move. His eyes did not so much as blink. "That is a bold thing to say," he murmured, "for a woman who cleans my floors." "You asked me what I say," Clara answered. "That's what I say. You can believe me or not." Something flickered across his face, and for a second Clara could not tell if it was anger or amusement. It settled into neither. It settled into interest. "Tell me," Vincent said. "From the beginning. Everything. And Clara, if that is your name." "It is." "Clara, do not decide for me which details matter and which do not. That is a mistake people make when they talk to me. They edit. They shape the story into what they think I want to hear. Do not do that. Give me all of it, exactly as it happened, and let me decide what matters." His eyes hardened. "Because a man tried to kill me last night, and right now, every single word you say is either the truth that saves your life or the lie that ends it. Do you understand?" Clara's mouth went dry. "I understand." And she told him. She told him about the empty guard post, how in 6 months she had never once seen it unmanned. She told him about the door that was always locked standing open. She told him about the glass on the silver tray, and the smell, the bitter almond smell that was wrong, and the thing her mother had said years ago about that smell meaning someone had already decided someone was going to die. She watched Vincent's face the whole time, and she saw the exact moment the story stopped being a maid's excuse and started being something he could not dismiss. "Your mother worked in a hospital," he said slowly. "Night shift, 11 years. She saw a patient who'd been poisoned once. She never forgot the smell, and she made sure I never would either." "So you smelled it, and you knew." "I knew something was wrong. I poured the glass out because I didn't want anyone else drinking it before somebody could figure out what it was. I didn't think about how it would look. I just moved it. I'm sorry. If that was the wrong thing, I'm sorry, but you were dying, and I wasn't thinking about evidence. I was thinking about keeping anyone else from touching it." Vincent was quiet for a moment. "That," he said finally, "is the first thing you have said that convinces me you are telling the truth." "Why?" "Because a guilty person would have had a better story ready. A guilty person would have known exactly why they moved the glass and explained it smoothly. You are apologizing for it. You are still not sure if you did the right thing." He almost smiled. "Guilty people are certain, Clara. Innocent people are the ones who lie awake wondering if they made a mistake." Clara said nothing. Her heart was pounding. "Now," Vincent said, and his voice dropped lower. "You said the man who tried to kill me is still in this house. That is a very specific thing to say. Not that someone tried, that he is still here. You said it like you know who. So I am going to ask you one question, and I want you to think very carefully before you answer, because your answer is going to change your life, either way." He leaned forward slightly, and it clearly cost him something to do it. "Who?" And there it was. Everything hung on this moment. Clara knew that if she named Richard Holloway and was wrong, or if she named him and Vincent did not believe her, she was finished. Richard had run this house for 20 years. He was trusted, he was respected, he was family in every way but blood, and she was a maid who had been in the house 6 months. If it came down to her word against his, there was no version of that fight she won. But she also knew what she had seen. "Before I answer," Clara said carefully, "can I ask you something first?" Vincent's eyebrows rose. Clearly people did not often answer his questions with questions. "Go on. Last night, your guards were gone from your door. In 6 months, I never saw that happen, not once. Who has the authority to move your personal guards? Not suggest it, not ask, order it so that they leave and don't come back and don't tell you?" Vincent's jaw tightened. "Very few people." "And your cameras. Dr. Owen said the cameras were disabled. Who can turn off the security in this house without setting off every alarm you have?" "Fewer still. And your schedule. Somebody knew exactly which night the storm would knock the power down. Somebody knew you'd take that glass of water because it's on your tray every night, isn't it? Same tray, same time. Somebody who knows your routine better than you know it yourself." Clara's voice was steady now, steadier than she felt. "I'm just a maid, Mr. Callahan. I don't know your business, but I know that whoever did this isn't an enemy who broke in. It's someone who works here, someone with keys, someone you trust so much you'd never in 100 years think to watch them." Vincent was staring at her now with an expression she could not read. "You have thought about this," he said. "I had all night in that study to think about nothing else." "And you have a name." Clara hesitated one final time. Then she thought about the white powder on the pristine gray sleeve, and she said it. "When Dr. Owen said the word poison," she said quietly, "I wasn't looking at him. I was looking at everyone else in the room, watching their faces, because that's what I do. I notice things. And there was one man whose face changed, just for a second. His jaw went tight, like he was bracing for something before he made it go smooth again. And on the cuff of his sleeve, right here, she touched her own wrist. There was a white powder, fine like it had been ground up. I'd seen that same powder maybe an hour before. On the rim of the glass, I poured into the plant." The silence that followed was so complete that Clara could hear the clock on the mantel ticking. "Say the name," Vincent said. His voice had gone very flat. "Richard Holloway." For a long moment, Vincent Callahan did not react at all. His face was a mask, and Clara felt the floor drop out from under her, because she had done it now. She had said it. She had accused the most trusted man in the house to the face of the most dangerous man in the city, and there was no taking it back. Then Vincent closed his eyes, and when he spoke, his voice was so soft and so full of something that sounded almost like grief that Clara barely recognized it. "Richard," he said, 20 years. I held his son at the boy's baptism. I paid for his wife's hospital bills when the cancer came. I trusted that man with the keys to everything I have ever built." His eyes opened, and they were wet, and they were also, underneath the wetness, absolutely deadly. "You had better be very, very sure, Clara Bennett, because if you are wrong about this, I cannot protect you, and if you are right—" He stopped. "If you are right, then you have just told me that the last person on this earth I believed loved me tried to murder me in my sleep. And I am not sure which of those two things I want less to be true." "I'm not asking you to believe me," Clara said. "I'm asking you to test it. Test the dirt in that plant. Test the glass residue if there's any left. Look at your camera logs, at who was signed in when they went dark. Look at your guard rotation and who changed it. I could be wrong about the man. I'm not wrong about the poison, and I'm not wrong that it came from inside. Prove me wrong, please. I would rather be wrong." And that, more than anything else she had said, was what convinced Vincent Callahan. because she wanted to be wrong. "Get me Owens," Vincent said to the young guard standing by the door, "and get me the head of my security detail, not Richard's people, mine, the ones who answer to me and only me." His eyes never left Clara. "And you, sit down. You are not going anywhere. From this moment, you do not leave my sight. Do you understand?" Clara sat. Within the hour, quietly and without anyone in the wider house knowing why, Vincent Callahan began to pull his own murder apart, thread by thread. Dr. Owens confirmed, when pressed, that the soil from the potted plant had tested positive for a fast-acting compound, and that the amount consistent with a full glass would have killed a man Vincent's size within 20 minutes. The camera logs showed a 14-minute gap in the third-floor feeds, beginning at 11:40 and ending at 11:54, and the system had been taken offline manually with administrator credentials. There were exactly 3 sets of administrator credentials in the house. One was Vincent's, one belonged to the head of security, and one belonged to Richard Holloway. The guard rotation had been changed at 9 that evening. The change order carried Richard's signature. Vincent looked at each piece of evidence as it was laid before him, and with each one, Clara watched something die a little more behind his eyes. This was not a man discovering a stranger's betrayal. This was a man watching 20 years of his life turn to poison in his hands. There could be an explanation, Vincent said at one point, almost to himself, staring at Richard's signature on the change order. "He runs this house. He signs 100 things a day. Anyone could have forged it," Clara agreed gently. "Anyone could have used his credentials. You're right to want another explanation. That's not weakness. That's you not wanting it to be him. But Mr. Callahan, ask yourself this. If it was anyone else, if it was some guard or some stranger who'd worked here a month, would you be looking this hard for a reason it isn't them?" Vincent looked at her sharply. "You wouldn't," Clara said. "You'd have already decided. The only reason you're searching for a door out of this is because it's Richard. And the fact that you love him that much is exactly the reason he was able to do it. He knew you'd never suspect him. He counted on it. Your loyalty to him was the weapon he used against you." Vincent stared at her for a long, long moment. "How old are you?" he asked finally. 27? You talk like someone who has been betrayed before." Clara looked down at her hands. "My father," she said quietly. "He left when I was 9. Took the savings my mother had put aside for a house. She never saw it coming because she loved him too much to look for it." She raised her eyes. "I learned young that the people who can hurt you most are the ones you'd never think to watch. So I started watching everyone. I couldn't help it after that. I see the little things because once, not seeing them cost my family everything." Something in Vincent's hard face shifted. For the first time, he did not look at her like a suspect or even like a useful witness. He looked at her like a person, like someone whose story he actually heard. "That is a sad way to have to learn to see the world," he said. "Maybe," Clara said. "But it's the reason you're still breathing. So I've made my peace with it." Vincent almost laughed. It came out as a rough breath through his nose, but it was real. "You are not afraid of me," he said. It was not quite a question. "Everyone in this house is afraid of me. My guards are afraid of me. Richard, the man who tried to kill me, was afraid of me. But you sit there and tell me my loyalty is a weakness, and my father figure is a murderer, and you do not so much as flinch. Why is that?" Clara considered the question honestly. "Because last night I watched you almost die," she said. "It's hard to be afraid of a man after you've held his shoulder and begged him to keep breathing. You stopped being a monster to me around midnight, Mr. Callahan. Somewhere around the part where you were just a person who was going to die on my floor if I didn't do something." For a moment, Vincent Callahan, the most feared man in New York, had no reply at all. Then the door opened, and the head of Vincent's personal security came in, and the fragile human moment closed like a fist. Vincent's face went cold again, back to the mask, back to the boss. But something between him and Clara had changed and would not change back. "Where is Richard now?" Vincent asked. "In his office, sir. He has been asking to see you all morning. He seems very concerned about the maid, keeps asking whether she has said anything, whether she can be trusted, whether we should, and I quote, deal with her before she causes problems." Clara felt ice crawl up her spine. So that was what Richard was doing while she sat in the study, not comforting her, building the case to erase her. Vincent's eyes flicked to Clara, and she saw him understand it too. He saw the fear cross her face, and something in his expression hardened into a promise. "Nobody deals with her," Vincent said very quietly. "Nobody touches her. If a single hair on this woman's head is harmed, I will consider it the same as if it were harm to me. Is that understood?" "Understood, sir." "Good." Vincent shifted against his pillows, and Clara could see the effort it took, but his voice was iron. "Here is what we are going to do. Richard cannot know that we know, not yet. If we move too soon, he runs, or worse, whoever is above him moves faster." He caught the flicker in Clara's eyes. "Yes, above him. You said it yourself, Clara. Richard runs my house, but Richard does not want my empire for himself. He is a manager, not a king. A man like that does not risk everything to kill me unless someone promised him something, someone with the ambition to want what I have and the blood claim to think they deserve it." "Your family," Clara breathed. Vincent's face was grim. "My family," he agreed. "There are people who share my name and my grandfather's blood, who have spent years believing I am too reckless, too unpredictable, too dangerous to be left in control of what we built. They have wanted me gone for a long time, but they would never dirty their own hands. They would need someone on the inside, someone I trusted, someone with the keys." His voice dropped. "Someone exactly like Richard Holloway." The pieces came together in Clara's mind like a lock sliding shut, and the picture they made was far bigger and far more terrifying than she had imagined. This was not one man with a poisoned glass. This was a conspiracy that reached into Vincent's own bloodline, a plan to have him die quietly in his sleep so that his relatives could carve up everything he owned and call it an inheritance instead of a murder. And she, Clara Bennett, a housemaid from Brooklyn, was now the only witness who could unravel it. "They're going to come after me," she said. "It was not a question. Even if you protect me here, if I know all this, they can't let me walk out of this house alive." "No," Vincent said simply, "they can't." The honesty of it, the total lack of comfort in it, somehow steadied her more than any reassurance could have. "So what do I do?" Clara asked. "You do exactly what you have been doing your whole life," Vincent said. "You stay invisible. You keep your head down. You let them believe you are a frightened little maid who saw nothing and knows nothing and is too scared to speak. You let Richard think his conversation with you this morning worked. Let him report back to whoever he answers to that the maid has been handled, that she is no threat, that she will keep her mouth shut out of fear." His eyes gleamed. "And while they relax, while they believe their problem is solved, you and I are going to quietly find every last one of them. And then, Clara, we are going to make them wish they had never underestimated the one person in this house who actually pays attention." Clara looked at him, this pale, poisoned, dangerous man who 12 hours ago she had never spoken a word to, and who was now the only thing standing between her and a very quiet death. "Why me?" she asked. "You don't know me. You have no reason to trust me. For all you know, I'm part of it. Why are you putting your survival in the hands of a maid?" Vincent was quiet for a moment. "Because," he said slowly, "in 25 years of running this world, do you know how many people have done something for me that cost them and gained them nothing? Not one. Everyone who has ever helped me wanted something: money, protection, a favor owed, power. Every single act of loyalty I have ever received came with an invoice attached." He looked at her, and his voice was rough again, but not from the poison this time. "You had no reason to walk into that room last night. You had every reason not to. You knew who I was. You knew what men like me do to people who get involved in our business. The smart thing, the safe thing, the thing anyone in this house would have done was to walk away and let me die and swear you never saw a thing. And instead, you ran to my bed and you begged me to breathe." He shook his head slowly, like he still could not quite believe it. "You are the first person in longer than I can remember," he said, "who tried to save me when there was absolutely nothing in it for you. That is why I trust you, Clara Bennett. Not because I know you, because in one night you have already shown me more genuine loyalty than men I have known for 20 years, including one who apparently spent last night trying to kill me." Clara did not know what to say to that, so she said the only true thing she had. "I would have done it for anyone," she said quietly. "Rich, poor, mafia, saint. If someone's dying in front of me and I can help, I help. That's not loyalty to you, Mr. Callahan. That's just who I am." "I know," Vincent said. "That is precisely why it is worth more." There was a knock at the door then, sharp and confident, and before anyone could answer, it opened, and Richard Holloway stepped into the room. Clara felt her whole body go rigid. She forced herself to breathe, forced her hands to stay loose in her lap, forced her face into the blank, frightened, harmless mask of a maid who knew nothing. Invisible. She had to be invisible now, more than she had ever been in her life. "Vincent," Richard said warmly, crossing to the bed with an expression of such perfect concern that Clara felt sick watching it. Thank God you're awake. I have been half out of my mind. How are you feeling? What do you need? I have doctors on standby. I am alive, Richard," Vincent said. And Clara marveled, truly marveled, at how completely his voice transformed. Every trace of the cold, calculating hunter vanished. What remained was warm, tired, grateful. The voice of a man speaking to a beloved friend. Thanks to God, and thanks to a little luck. When I heard, I couldn't believe it. Poison in our own home, Vincent. Richard's voice trembled with what sounded exactly like real emotion. He was very, very good. "I will not rest until I find who did this. I promise you. Whoever they are, whatever it takes." "I know you won't," Vincent said. "You have always protected this family. What would I ever do without you?" Clara had to look in the floor. She could not watch it. The tenderness in Vincent's voice was so convincing that even she, who knew the truth, almost believed it. And she realized with a chill that this was the game now. This was what the coming days would be. Vincent Callahan smiling into the face of the man who had tried to murder him, embracing him, thanking him, while quietly building the case that would destroy him. It was going to require a performance from both of them that never once slipped, not for a second, because the moment Richard sensed the truth, people would start dying, starting most likely with Clara. "And her?" Richard said. His voice changed. It cooled. Clara felt his eyes land on her like a physical weight. "The maid. I have been concerned, Vincent. She was found standing over you. She moved evidence. I don't like it. I've been thinking, for your safety, perhaps it would be best if we were to quietly let her go. Send her away. We can't have someone unreliable so close to you, not after this." The room seemed to hold its breath. Clara kept her eyes down. She could feel her heartbeat in her throat. Everything depended on what Vincent said next. If he defended her too strongly, Richard would wonder why. If he agreed to send her away, she would be dead within a week, alone and unprotected, an accident on a Brooklyn street corner. Vincent had to thread a needle finer than a hair, and he had to do it instantly, without a flicker of hesitation. You know, Vincent said slowly, thoughtfully, I had the same thought. Clara's stomach dropped. She's a strange little thing, Vincent went on, and there was a dismissiveness in his voice now that was so casual and cruel, it made Clara's skin crawl even knowing it was an act. Barely speaks, won't look you in the eye. Frankly, Richard, she gives me the creeps, but... He sighed, like a man making a tedious concession. The doctor tells me she is the reason I am not in the ground. Something about her noticing I was in distress and calling for help fast. And you know how people talk. If I throw out the little maid who supposedly saved my life, it looks ungrateful, it looks cold. And right now, with someone clearly trying to move against me, I cannot afford to look weak or unloved to the staff. Do you understand? Perception matters. I need the house to see me as a man who rewards loyalty, not one who discards it. Clara understood exactly what he was doing, and it was brilliant. He was not defending her. He was using her. He was framing his protection of her as a cold political calculation, the kind of ruthless, image-conscious reasoning Richard would find completely natural coming from Vincent Callahan. So here's what we will do, Vincent continued. We keep her, for now. We give her some meaningless promotion. Let the staff see me reward the maid who saved the boss. Very good for morale, very good for the image. And we keep her close, where I can watch her. Because you are right, Richard. I do not fully trust her either. Better to have her under my eye than out there talking to God knows who. When all this dies down, and I have found the real animal who did this, then we quietly let her drift away. No drama, no story. Does that satisfy you? Clara watched Richard's face out of the corner of her eye, and she saw him weigh it. She saw the calculation running behind his concerned expression, keeping the maid close, under Vincent's eye, where Richard could also keep an eye on her, where she could be watched and, if necessary, reached. Against the risk of Vincent asking too many questions about why Richard wanted her gone so badly. Yes, Richard said at last, and he smiled, and it was a warm, easy, satisfied smile. Yes, that's wise. As always, Vincent, keep her close. Watch her. I think that's exactly right. He had decided the maid was more useful alive and watched than dead and questioned. He had decided she was no threat. He had decided, in short, exactly what Vincent had wanted him to decide. I'll arrange the promotion myself. Keep it all quiet. Thank you, Richard, Vincent said, and closed his eyes as if exhausted. I don't know what I'd do without you. Now let me rest. Come see me this evening. We'll talk about how to catch this coward. Of course. Rest. I'll handle everything. Richard turned to go, and as he passed Clara, he paused. He looked down at her, and for one endless second his eyes searched her face, looking for something, some flicker of knowledge, some crack in the frightened mask. Clara gave him nothing. She looked up at him with wide, scared, grateful eyes, the eyes of a maid who could not believe her good fortune at being allowed to stay, and she whispered, "Thank you for speaking up for me, sir. I was so afraid. I'll do whatever you say." The last of the suspicion drained out of Richard's face. He patted her shoulder, the way you'd pat a dog, and Clara felt his touch like a spider crawling across her skin. "There, there," he said kindly. "Just do your work and stay out of trouble, and everything will be fine." And then he was gone, the door clicking shut behind him. For a long moment, neither Vincent nor Clara spoke. Clara realized she had been holding her breath and let it out slowly, her hands shaking in her lap, now that she no longer had to keep them still. Vincent opened his eyes. "You did well," he said quietly. "Better than well." He believed every word. The way you thanked him at the end, the fear in your voice, that was perfect. He walked out of here certain you are nothing. He studied her with something close to admiration. "You are a far better liar than you have any right to be, for an honest woman." "I don't like it," Clara said, and her voice was unsteady. "I don't like lying. I don't like watching you hold his hand and thank him when I know what he did. It made me feel sick. Good, Vincent said. It should. The day it stops making you feel sick is the day you have become one of us. Hold on to that feeling, Clara. It is the only thing that separates you from me. He said it lightly, but there was something underneath it that was not light at all. Something almost like a warning or a regret. Now listen, it is going to get harder from here, not easier. Richard bought it today, but he is a careful man, and careful men double check. He will test you. He will watch you. He may even try to get you alone, to feel you out, to make sure you really are as harmless as you seem. When that happens, and it will happen, you cannot break character. Not for 1 second, because the moment he suspects you know the truth, he will not bother to fire you. Do you understand what I'm telling you? He'll kill me, Clara said. He'll kill you, Vincent agreed. And he will make it look like nothing. A fall, a mugging, a gas leak in a Brooklyn apartment. You will simply stop existing, and no one will ever know why. His eyes bored into hers. So from this moment, you trust no one in this house but me. Not the guards, not the other staff, not even Owens, not completely. Anyone could be his. Anyone could be watching for him. The only safe person in this entire estate is the man in this bed, and even I cannot be everywhere. Do you understand the danger you are in? Clara nodded slowly, and then, because she was Clara, because she noticed things, she said the one thing that had been sitting in the back of her mind since the moment she named Richard Holloway. "There's something you're not thinking about," she said. Vincent's brow furrowed. "And what is that?" "You said Richard answers to someone in your family, someone with the ambition and the blood to want what you have." Clara's voice was quiet and careful. "But how did that person get to Richard in the first place? Richard's loyal to you. Everyone says so. You've known him 20 years, so somebody had to turn him. Somebody had to find the one thing that would make a loyal man betray the person he loves most." She met Vincent's eyes. "What did they offer him, Mr. Callahan? Or what did they threaten? Because a man doesn't poison the person he held at a baptism for money. Something else is going on with Richard. Something you don't know yet. And until you understand what made him do it, you don't actually understand what you're fighting." Vincent Callahan stared at her, and for the first time since Clara had walked into that room, she saw something cross his face that she had not seen before. Not fear, not grief, not calculation. She saw the dawning realization that the woman his entire house had ignored for 6 months might just be the sharpest mind in it. "My God," he said softly. "You are right. I have been so busy being betrayed that I never stopped to ask why." He was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke again, his voice had changed. It was the voice of a man who had just realized the ground beneath him went far deeper and far darker than he had understood. "There is a reason Richard turned, a reason I cannot see, and whatever it is the key to all of this." He looked at Clara with something that was no longer just trust. It was need. "I cannot find it alone. I am confined to this bed, watched by his people, surrounded by his eyes. But you," his voice dropped, "you are invisible. You always have been. People say things in front of you they would never say in front of me, because to them, you are furniture. You go everywhere in this house and no one sees you come or go." Clara understood what he was asking before he finished asking it, and it sent a cold thrill of fear straight through her. "You want me to find out," she said. "You want me to move through this house, listening, watching, invisible, and find out what turned Richard Holloway against you." "I want you," Vincent said quietly, "to do the one thing you have done better than anyone I have ever met. I want you to notice." Clara looked at the man in the bed, the most dangerous man in New York, now the most vulnerable, asking a housemaid from Brooklyn to walk willingly into the heart of a conspiracy that had already tried to kill him once and would happily kill her to keep it secret. Every rational part of her screamed to refuse, to take whatever quiet exit she could find, to run back to Brooklyn and the late rent and the broken heat and pretend none of this had ever happened. But she thought about her father and the savings he stole and the way her mother never saw it coming because she was too loyal to look. She thought about a lifetime of being invisible, of being furniture, of being the woman nobody ever noticed. And she thought about how, for once in her life, being invisible might actually mean something. "All right," Clara said. "I'll do it." Vincent Callahan looked at her, and slowly, painfully, he extended one pale hand across the covers toward her. Clara looked at it. Then she reached out and took it and shook the hand of the most feared man in the city, sealing a partnership that neither of them could have imagined 24 hours ago, between a mafia boss who had forgotten what real loyalty looked like and the invisible maid who had just reminded him. "Then we begin," Vincent said. "And Clara, from this moment, you and I are the only two people in the world we can trust. Whatever you learn, you bring to me and no one else. Whatever I learn, I bring to you. If we are going to survive this, we survive it together, or we do not survive it at all." His grip tightened. "Can you live with that?" Clara held his gaze and did not look away. "I've been living with worse my whole life," she said. "At least this time somebody sees me." The promotion came the next morning, exactly as Richard had promised. Clara was moved off the general cleaning rotation and given a new title, personal household attendant to Mr. Callahan, which meant that she now had a reason to be near Vincent at any hour without anyone questioning it. Richard himself delivered the news, smiling, patting her shoulder again, telling her what a lucky girl she was and how she must be sure to earn the trust the boss had shown her. Clara thanked him with wide, grateful eyes and the trembling voice of a woman who could not believe her good fortune, and Richard walked away completely satisfied that he had a mouse exactly where he wanted it. He had no idea he had just handed the mouse the run of the whole house. Over the next 3 days, Clara did what she did better than anyone alive. She noticed. She carried trays and folded linens and dusted shelves, and she moved through the Callahan estate like a ghost. And everywhere she went, she listened. She learned the rhythm of the house all over again, but this time she was not learning it to stay out of trouble. She was learning it to hunt. And what she found in those first 3 days was a wall. Because Richard Holloway was careful. He did not take meetings in the open. He did not leave papers lying around. He did not speak carelessly in front of the staff. Whatever he was doing, whoever he was answering to, he kept it locked away behind a door Clara could not open. She reported this to Vincent each night, sitting at the edge of his bed while he recovered his strength, and each night she watched his frustration grow. "He is too clean," Vincent muttered on the 3rd night. "In 20 years I never once caught him in a lie, and now that I know he is the biggest liar in my house, I still cannot catch him. He has spent 2 decades learning how I think. He knows exactly what I would look for, and he has hidden it all somewhere I would never look." "Then stop thinking like you," Clara said. Vincent looked at her. "You keep trying to catch him the way Vincent Callahan would catch him," she said. "Big picture, money trails, meetings, power moves. But Richard knows how Vincent Callahan hunts. He's ready for that. He's not ready for how a maid hunts." She leaned forward. "A maid doesn't look at the big things. A maid looks at the small things. What time a man takes his coffee, which drawer he keeps locked, whose name makes him lower his voice on the phone, which day of the week he changes his routine for no reason anyone can see." She smiled faintly. "You've been watching for a conspiracy. Let me watch for a habit." And on the 4th day, Clara found the habit. Every Tuesday and Friday at precisely 4 in the afternoon, Richard Holloway left the estate. He did not announce it. He did not put it on any schedule. He simply told the front gate he had errands, took one of the house cars, drove out alone, and returned 2 hours later. He had done it, Clara learned, by quietly asking the right invisible people the right invisible questions, every Tuesday and Friday for over a year. A year, Vincent said softly when she told him. This has been building for a year, right under my nose. Where does he go? Clara asked. 2 hours, twice a week, alone, no explanation. That's where it is. Whatever turned him, whoever he answers to, it's at the other end of those drives. Then we follow him, Vincent said. But following Richard Holloway turned out to be nearly impossible, because Richard was as careful on the road as he was in the house. He changed routes, he doubled back, he watched his mirrors. The one time Vincent sent a man to tail him, Richard lost him within 10 minutes, and worse, came home that evening and mentioned, oh so casually, that he thought he'd been followed by some fool and had reported it to security as a possible threat to the family. It was a warning, delivered with a smile, and Vincent understood it perfectly. Richard was telling him, without telling him, that he could not be tailed, and that anyone who tried would be noticed. He is testing me, Vincent said grimly. He is checking whether I suspect anything, and if my men keep following him and failing, eventually he will realize the orders come from me, and then he will know I know. We cannot follow him again. It is too dangerous. Then we don't follow him, Clara said. We find out where he goes another way. How? Clara thought about it for a long moment, and then she remembered something. Something small. The kind of small thing only she would ever notice. The car, she said. When Richard comes back from his Tuesday and Friday drives, one of the junior staff cleans and refuels the house cars every evening. I've watched him do it. He keeps a log. Mileage, fuel, that kind of thing. Insurance requires it. She met Vincent's eyes. If I can see that log, I can see exactly how many miles Richard puts on the car each Tuesday and Friday. And if the mileage is the same every single time, then he's going to the same place every single time. And if I know the distance and I know the roads out of here, I can start to figure out where. Vincent stared at her, and slowly a smile spread across his tired face. You, he said, are wasted carrying trays. Getting the log was its own small ordeal. Clara could not simply ask for it. She had to befriend the junior staffer, a shy 19-year-old named Marcus, who cleaned the cars. And she did it the way she did everything, gently, patiently, invisibly. She brought him coffee. She listened to him talk about his sick mother back in the Bronx. And on the 5th day, when he stepped away to answer a call, she spent 90 seconds with his logbook and a photograph she took with the cheap phone Vincent had given her, and she had it. The numbers told the story. Every Tuesday and Friday, without fail, Richard's drive added exactly 31.4 miles to the odometer, round trip, 15.7 miles each way. Always the same destination, every time, for over a year. Vincent had a map of the area brought to his room, and he and Clara spent an entire night bent over it, drawing a circle 15.7 miles out from the estate in every direction, then narrowing it down by which roads Richard was known to take when he left. By dawn, they had it down to a small cluster of possibilities in a quiet, wealthy suburb north of the city. Old money, big houses set far back from the road, the kind of place where nobody asked questions and nobody saw anything. I know that area, Vincent said slowly, staring at the map. His face had gone very still. I know it well. He tapped a spot near the edge of the circle, and his hand was not quite steady. There is a house there. A house I have not thought about in years, because I made myself stop thinking about it. He looked up at Clara, and there was something haunted in his eyes. It belongs to my uncle, Salvatore Callahan, my father's younger brother. Clara felt the temperature of the room drop. You said your family, she said. You said someone with the ambition and the blood. Salvatore, Vincent said, and the name came out like it cost him something. When my father died, the empire passed to me. I was young. Salvatore believed it should have been his. He believed I was too reckless, too soft, too modern. He wanted the old ways, the bloody ways, and I refused him. There was a war inside the family. It nearly tore us apart. In the end, I won. because the men followed me and not him. And Salvatore, he swore his loyalty, kissed my ring, called me the head of the family." Vincent's jaw tightened, and I believed him. God help me, I believed him, the same way I believed Richard. I told myself the war was over. I told myself family was family. He closed his eyes. "I have been a fool twice over." "He never stopped," Clara said quietly. "Salvatore never stopped wanting it. He just got patient. He waited. He found the one man closest to you, the one man you'd never suspect, and he spent a year turning him. And now—" She stopped. "But that still doesn't answer my question. Why would Richard listen? Salvatore's the one with the grudge. Salvatore's the one who wants the empire, but Richard has no reason to want you dead. Salvatore had to give Richard something or take something from him to make him do this. What's Salvatore holding over Richard Holloway?" "I don't know," Vincent admitted. "But you are right. That is the missing piece. And I think—" He hesitated. "I think it is time we stopped watching from a distance. I think it is time someone got inside that house." Clara's blood ran cold, because she already knew, before he said it, exactly who that someone would have to be. "No," she said. "Clara." "No, Vincent. I followed the mileage. I found the house. I did my part. You cannot ask me to walk into the home of the man who ordered your murder. I'm a maid, not a spy. If Salvatore or Richard sees me there, if they even suspect—" "They won't see you," Vincent said. "That is exactly the point. You are invisible, Clara. It is your greatest gift and your greatest curse, and right now it is the only weapon I have that Salvatore cannot see coming." He reached out and gripped her hand, and his eyes were burning. "Listen to me. Every Tuesday and Friday, Richard drives to that house. He goes inside. He talks to my uncle. And I would bet my life that a house like Salvatore's, an old man living alone with his money and his grudges, has a staff, a cook, a cleaner, a housekeeper, people who come and go and are never noticed, because that is what people like us do. We make ourselves not see the help." His grip tightened. "I can get you inside that house, Clara. As staff, as one more invisible woman carrying one more tray. And Richard and Salvatore will look right through you, the same way this entire house looked through you for 6 months, because men like them cannot conceive of a threat that mops their floors." Clara pulled her hand back. Her heart was hammering. "And if they do notice? If Richard recognizes me? I've been in the same house as that man for a week. He knows my face." "He knows the face of a frightened maid he already decided is harmless," Vincent said. "He is not looking for you. He would never in 1,000 years expect the maid he thinks he handled to turn up in his co-conspirator's kitchen. The human mind does not see what it has already dismissed. You know this better than anyone. You have spent your whole life being not seen." His voice softened. "I am not ordering you to do this, Clara. I told you the first night, we do this together or not at all. If you say no, I will find another way, though I do not know what it will be, and I will not think less of you. But I am telling you the truth, which is that you are the only person on this earth who can walk into that house and come out with what we need. And without it, Salvatore wins. He kills me. And then, because you know too much, he kills you. The only way either of us survives is if we understand what we are fighting. And the answer is in that house." Clara sat very still for a long time. She thought about running. She thought about it seriously, for the first time in days. She could disappear. She had disappeared her whole life. That was the one thing she was good at. She could vanish into Brooklyn, or further, change her name, become invisible in a whole new city. Maybe Salvatore would never find her. Maybe. But she thought about her mother, and about loyalty, and about the way Vincent Callahan had looked at her and said, "You are the first person in, longer than I can remember, who tried to save me when there was nothing in it for you." And she thought about the fact that if she ran, this man who had trusted her, who had seen her, would almost certainly die. "If I do this," she said slowly, "I have rules." "Name them." I go in, I find out what Salvatore has on Richard, and I get out. I don't confront anyone. I don't take risks. The second it gets too dangerous, I walk away, and you don't argue with me about it. And when it's over, when this is all over, however it ends, I walk out of your world, and I never come back, and you never come looking for me. I go back to my life, whatever's left of it. Something flickered in Vincent's eyes at that last part, something that looked almost like disappointment, though Clara could not imagine why. Agreed, he said. All of it. You have my word. Your word, Clara said. The word of a Mafia boss. The word of the man whose life you saved, Vincent said quietly, for whatever that is worth to you. Clara looked at him, and despite everything, despite the fear coiled in her stomach, she believed him. All right, she said, get me into that house. It took 4 days to arrange, and Vincent arranged it with a care that told Clara just how seriously he took her safety. He did not simply insert her into Salvatore's staff, which would have raised questions. Instead, through channels Clara did not ask about, he arranged for one of Salvatore's existing cleaning women to receive a sudden and very real family emergency in another state, complete with a genuine sick relative and paid travel, so that her departure would seem completely natural. And he arranged for the temp agency Salvatore's household used to have exactly one qualified, quiet, references-checked woman available to fill the gap on short notice. Clara Bennett became Clara Beckett, a soft-spoken housekeeper with a spotless work history and a face that no one would ever remember. The morning she was to start, Vincent called her to his room. He was standing now, mostly recovered, dressed for the first time since the poisoning, and the sight of him on his feet, powerful again, reminded Clara sharply of who he really was. "Before you go," he said, "there is something you need to understand." He handed her a small phone, different from the one before, slimmer, plainer. "This has one number in it, mine, direct. If you are ever in danger, any danger, you press this and you say one word, anything, and I will have men at that house in 15 minutes. I have already positioned them nearby. They will not move unless you call, but they are there. You are not going in alone, Clara. I want you to understand that. You will feel alone in that house, but you are not. I am with you the entire time." Clara took the phone. Her hand was steady, but only barely. 15 minutes is a long time, she said quietly. A lot can happen in 15 minutes. Ita said. "I know," Vincent said, and there was a weight in his voice. "Believe me, I know. It is the thing that will keep me awake every hour you are in that house." He looked at her for a long moment. "Clara, why are you doing this? Truly, I have offered you nothing that would make it worth your life. You could still walk away. So tell me the truth one more time. Why?" Clara thought about it. "Because you saw me," she said finally. "For 6 months I was furniture in your house. And then one night I did something that mattered, and instead of throwing me away, you looked at me like I was a person. You listened to me. You trusted a maid over a man you'd known for 20 years because you decided I was worth listening to." She swallowed. "Nobody's done that for me since my mother died. Not once. And maybe that's a stupid reason to risk my life. But I've spent 27 years being invisible, Vincent, and you're the first person who ever made me feel like being seen was worth something. So I guess I'm doing this because you gave me that. And I don't have very much, but I pay what I owe." Vincent Callahan, a man who had ordered deaths without blinking, who had survived a lifetime in the bloodiest business in the world, looked at the invisible maid from Brooklyn, and for just a moment, Clara saw his composure crack all the way through. "You owe me nothing," he said roughly. "Do you hear me? Whatever happens in that house, whatever you find, you owe me nothing. You already paid any debt you could imagine the night you ran to my bed. Everything you do from here, you do as a free woman, by your own choice, and not one drop of it belongs to me." He stepped closer. "And Clara, if it comes to a choice ever between the mission and your life, you choose your life. You drop everything, you call that number, and you run. I would rather die with Salvatore's secret intact than live knowing I sent you to your death for it. Do you understand me?" Clara nodded slowly. She could not quite speak. "Say it," Vincent demanded. "I understand," she whispered. "Good." He straightened, and the boss came back into his face, the armor sliding back on. "Then go, and Clara, come back." Clara walked into Salvatore Callahan's house that afternoon as Clara Beckett, and she made herself invisible the way she had made herself invisible her whole life, and the way she had promised Vincent she would. She kept her head down. She learned the house. She cleaned the floors and dusted the shelves and carried the trays, and the old man who owned the house, Salvatore, a lean, white-haired man with cold eyes and a soft voice so much like Vincent's that it made Clara's skin crawl, looked right through her exactly as Vincent had said he would. For 3 days she found nothing. Salvatore was, if anything, even more careful than Richard. He took his important calls in a study that was always locked when he left it. He received few visitors. He spoke to no one about anything that mattered. And then, on the 4th day, which was a Friday, Richard Holloway came. Clara had known he would. It was Friday, 4 in the afternoon, and Richard's car pulled up the long drive exactly on schedule. She was dusting in the hall when she heard the front door, heard the familiar voice, and her whole body went rigid with a terror so total she had to grip the shelf to stay upright. Richard Holloway, the man who had tried to murder Vincent, the man who knew her face, was walking into the house where she stood. She did the only thing she could. She turned her back, picked up her cleaning cart, and walked slowly and calmly toward the service stairs, just another piece of furniture drifting out of the room. She heard Richard pass behind her. She heard him speak to Salvatore. And she heard, with a flood of relief so intense it nearly buckled her knees, that he did not so much as glance her way. She was furniture. She was invisible. Vincent had been right. Salvatore and Richard went into the locked study, and the door closed. And Clara, who had promised Vincent she would not take risks, who had made rules, who had sworn she would walk away the second things got dangerous, stood in the empty hall and looked at the closed study door and understood that everything she and Vincent needed was on the other side of it, being spoken aloud right now, and would never be spoken aloud again. She thought about the phone in her pocket. She thought about her rules. She thought about Vincent saying, "You choose your life." And then she thought about the fact that this was the moment. This was the only moment. If she did not do this now, she would have walked into the lion's den for nothing, and Vincent would die, and eventually so would she. There was a powder room adjoining the study. Clara had cleaned it that morning. It shared a wall, and there was a heating vent low on that wall, an old house vent, the kind that carried sound between rooms whether you wanted it to or not. Clara had noticed it, the way she noticed everything. She had noticed it and filed it away without knowing why. The same way she had noticed 100 small things in her life that turned out to matter. She slipped into the powder room. She locked the door. She knelt down by the vent, and she pressed her ear to the metal, and she held her breath, and she listened. At first there was only the murmur of 2 voices, too low to make out. Clara closed her eyes and strained, and slowly the words began to resolve. "He is stronger every day," Richard was saying, and his voice was different than any voice Clara had ever heard him use. Tight, frightened. "He is up and walking. He is asking questions. Salvatore, I am telling you, I do not think he believed the maid did it. He is looking for something. I can feel it." "You are being paranoid," Salvatore's soft voice replied. "If he suspected you, you would already be dead. You know how my nephew operates. He does not investigate the people he intends to punish. He simply removes them. The fact that you are still breathing means he trusts you. You did not see his face." "Enough." A pause. "The first attempt failed. That is unfortunate. But it changes nothing. He must die, Richard, and he must die soon, before he grows strong enough to look too closely. We will simply do it again, and this time we will not be so delicate." Clara's heart stopped. They were planning it again. A second attempt, right now on the other side of this wall. "I cannot," Richard said, and his voice broke. "God forgive me, Salvatore. I cannot do it again. The first time nearly killed me. Do you understand what you are asking? I have loved that man like a brother for 20 years. I held his hand this week. I looked into his eyes and told him I would find whoever poisoned him, and he thanked me. He thanked me, and it is tearing me apart. I cannot do it again. I won't." And then Salvatore said something that made everything finally horribly clear. "You will do it," the old man said softly, "or your daughter will spend the rest of her life in a cage." The silence that followed was total. "You still do not understand your position, do you?" Salvatore continued, and his voice was gentle, and it was the most terrible thing Clara had ever heard. "I own you, Richard. I have owned you since the day I learned what your precious Emily did. The accident, the boy she left in the road, the witnesses I paid to look the other way, the police report I made disappear, the evidence sitting in a safe deposit box with your daughter's name all over it." A pause. "One phone call, that is all it takes. One phone call, and your Emily goes to prison for vehicular manslaughter and leaving the scene, and her children grow up visiting their mother behind glass. That is what I hold. That is why you poisoned the man you love. And that is why you will do it again and again and as many times as it takes until Vincent Callahan is in the ground and I am the head of this family. Because there is nothing you would not do to protect your child. Not even murder. We both know this. It is the only reason I chose you." Clara knelt frozen on the floor of the powder room, her ear pressed to the vent, tears running silently down her face, and she understood at last the whole terrible shape of it. Richard Holloway was not a villain. Richard Holloway was a father, trapped, being tortured into destroying the man he loved to save the daughter he loved more. Salvatore had found the one thing that could turn a loyal man, and it was not greed, and it was not ambition. It was love. It was the oldest and strongest and most human thing there was, twisted into a weapon and aimed at Vincent's heart. And now they were going to try again. Soon. And this time, they would not be delicate. Clara had to get out. She had to get to Vincent. She had everything now, the why, the who, the threat that bound them all together, and she had to get it to Vincent before the second attempt came. She rose from the floor, silent as a shadow, and reached for the powder room door, and froze. Because from the other side of the door, from the hallway, close, far too close, came the soft, unmistakable sound of footsteps stopping. And then a voice she did not recognize. One of Salvatore's men spoke quietly to someone. The new cleaning woman, Beckett. Where did she come from again? The agency. Filled in for Rosa when Rosa's sister got sick. Rosa's sister. A pause. Rosa doesn't have a sister. I grew up 3 houses down from that family. Rosa is an only child. The silence that followed seemed to last 1,000 years, and Clara Bennett, alone and invisible in a powder room in the house of the man who wanted her dead, with the truth that could save Vincent Callahan burning in her chest and a phone that would take 15 minutes to bring help, understood that her invisibility had finally, at the worst possible moment, run out. Clara's mind, which had spent a lifetime noticing things, now worked faster than it ever had. Panic wanted to seize her, and she did not let it. She had perhaps 30 seconds before that man's suspicion hardened into action, before he knocked on the study door and told Salvatore that the new cleaning woman's story did not hold. 30 seconds to become invisible again, or to die in this house. She could not run. Running would confirm everything. She could not hide. There was nowhere to hide. So Clara did the one thing that had kept her alive her entire life. She became small, she became harmless, she became furniture, she flushed the toilet. She ran the sink for exactly the length of time a person washes their hands. And then she unlocked the powder room door and stepped out into the hallway, drying her hands on her apron, with the blank, tired, faintly bored expression of a cleaning woman who had done nothing all day but clean. The man was standing right there, broad-shouldered, hard-faced, one of Salvatore's, his eyes fixed on her the instant the door opened. Clara did not flinch. She looked at him the way a maid looks at a man she does not know is important, with a small, polite, empty nod, and she said in a voice flattened by exhaustion, "Excuse me, sir. Didn't know anyone was waiting. Bathroom's free." And she started to walk past him, toward her cart, toward the service stairs, her whole body screaming at her to move faster, and her whole will forcing her to move slow. "Hey," the man said. "Beckett." Clara stopped. She turned back, and she let a flicker of confusion cross her face. Nothing more. "Yes, sir?" He studied her. She could feel him weighing her, this hard man who had grown up 3 houses from Rosa's family, who knew Rosa had no sister, who was looking at a woman whose entire cover story had just collapsed. Everything hung on the next few seconds. If Clara showed 1 ounce of fear, 1 flicker of the terror roaring through her, he would know. So she showed him nothing but tiredness. "You need the powder room cleaned again before you use it?" she asked. And she said it with the faint, put-upon sigh of a woman who has been cleaning all day and would very much like to not clean it again. "I just did it this morning, but if Mr. Salvatore's got guests, I can wipe it down quick. No trouble." And that small, ordinary complaint, that perfect note of a woman thinking about nothing but her workload, was what saved her. Because a spy would never volunteer to clean a bathroom. A spy would never sigh about her chores. A spy would be afraid, and this woman was only tired. The man's suspicion did not vanish, but it wavered. Clara saw it waver. "Where are you from?" he asked. "Queens," Clara said, which was true, and truth has a texture that lies do not. "Agency sent me, filling in for the regular girl, Rosa, I think. Her sister took sick, or her cousin, I don't rightly know. They didn't tell me much, just said, 'Come Monday and don't touch the study.'" She shrugged, a small, helpless gesture. "I go where they send me, sir. That's the job." Sister, or her cousin, I don't rightly know. She had done it without even thinking, softened the lie, made it vague, made it the kind of thing a temp who barely knew the household would actually say. She did not claim to know it was a sister. She claimed only to have been told something by someone who did not care to explain. It was exactly, precisely what an innocent woman would say, and it left the man with nothing solid to grab. He stared at her a moment longer. Clara held his gaze with dull, patient eyes and waited to find out if she would live. "Go on," he said finally. "Get back to work." "Yes, sir." Clara nodded, turned, and walked to her cart, and she did not let her hands shake until they were wrapped around the handle where he could not see them. She pushed the cart down the hall, into the service corridor, up the back stairs, 1 slow step at a time, every instinct screaming, "Run, run, run." And she did not run. She walked. She walked like a woman with nothing to fear, because the moment she stopped walking like that, she was dead. She made it to the 2nd floor. She made it to the linen closet where she was supposed to be restocking. She stepped inside, and she closed the door, and she sank to the floor with her back against the shelves, and she pressed both hands over her mouth so that no sound would escape, and she shook. She had it. She had everything, and she had almost died getting it, and she was not out of the house yet. She pulled out the plain phone Vincent had given her. Her hands were trembling so badly she could barely hold it. She did not press the emergency number, not yet, because men crashing into Salvatore's house right now would tell Salvatore everything and get her killed in the crossfire. Instead, she typed, with shaking thumbs, a single text. Found it. Everything. R is being blackmailed. His daughter. Salvatore has evidence of a crime she committed. R doesn't want to do it, but S will send her to prison if he doesn't. They are planning a 2nd attempt, soon. Not delicate this time. I was almost caught. Getting out now. "Do not come, wait for me." She stared at it. Then she deleted the last two lines. "Do not come, wait for me." Because she knew Vincent now, knew him well enough to know that if she told him she had almost been caught, he would send men into that house within the minute, mission be damned, and it would be a bloodbath. She retyped it simpler. Found everything. R blackmailed by S over R's daughter. Crime she committed. S has proof. Second attempt on you planned, soon, and not subtle. Leaving now. Will explain in person. She hit send, and then she deleted the entire message thread, and she slid the phone back into her apron, and she made herself breathe. Get out. Just get out. Finish the shift like a normal day, walk out the front gate at 5 like you always do, and get to Vincent. It was the longest hour of Clara Bennett's life. She finished the linens. She cleaned 2 more rooms. She kept her head down and her hands busy, and every time footsteps passed in the hall, she was certain they were coming for her. Twice she heard Richard's voice, and each time she moved calmly out of its path. Once she saw Salvatore himself, walking Richard to the door, the two of them talking in low voices, and she pressed herself into a doorway with a dust rag and became nothing, and they passed within 10 feet of her and never saw her at all. At the door, Salvatore put a hand on Richard's shoulder, and Clara, invisible in her doorway, heard the old man say softly, "Tuesday. It will be over by Tuesday, and then it is finished, Richard, and your Emily is free forever. Think of that. Just get through Tuesday." And Richard, his face gray and hollow, his eyes wet, nodded like a man being led to his own execution, and said nothing, and left. Tuesday. 4 days. Clara had 4 days. At 5 o'clock, Clara Beckett clocked out, collected her small bag, and walked down the long drive toward the front gate on legs that did not feel like her own. Every step she expected a shout behind her. Every step she expected a hand on her shoulder. The gate came closer and closer, and her heart pounded so hard she could taste it. And then she was through it, out on the quiet suburban road, and a plain gray car pulled up beside her, exactly as Vincent had promised. And the door opened, and she fell into it, and it drove away, and only then, did Clara Bennett begin to cry. She cried the whole way back, not from fear, though there was plenty of that. She cried because of Richard, because she had walked into that house expecting to find a monster, and instead she had found a broken father, and the truth of it sat in her chest like a stone. Vincent was waiting for her in his study when she arrived, on his feet, fully himself now, and the moment he saw her face, he crossed the room and took her by the shoulders and looked her over. And Clara realized with a jolt that he was checking her for injuries. "Are you hurt?" he demanded. "Your message. You said you were almost caught. Are you—" "I'm fine," Clara said. "I'm not hurt. Vincent, I'm fine. Let go, I'm fine." He did not let go. Not right away. He held her shoulders and looked into her face for a long moment, and Clara saw in his eyes something she had not expected to see, a fear that had nothing to do with Salvatore or the Empire or the second attempt. He had been afraid for her, genuinely, personally afraid, in a way she suspected Vincent Callahan had not allowed himself to be afraid for another human being in a very long time. "You said do not come," he said roughly. "You never sent it, but I could see you typed it and deleted it. Twice. I watched the little dots appear and disappear. Do you know what that hour was like for me, sitting here, watching those dots, knowing you were in danger and knowing you were telling me not to come save you?" "I didn't want a bloodbath," Clara said quietly. "I didn't want people to die because of me." "People dying because of you," Vincent repeated, and he laughed, a short, disbelieving sound. "Clara, you were in the house of the man who ordered my murder, one wrong word from your own death, and your concern was that my men might get hurt coming to save you." He finally released her shoulders and stepped back, shaking his head. "I do not understand you. I have spent my whole life surrounded by people who would sell their own mothers to save their skin, and then there is you, worried about a bloodbath while you kneel with your ear to a vent in the devil's own house." His voice softened. "Sit down. Tell me, all of it. Everything you heard." So Clara sat, and she told him. She told him about the study, and the vent, and the powder room. She told him what she had heard, word for word, as much as she could remember, and Clara remembered nearly all of it, because Clara noticed things and forgot nothing. She told him about the second attempt, planned for Tuesday, and she watched Vincent's face harden into stone. And then she came to the part she had been dreading, and her voice grew softer and slower, and she told him about Richard. She told him that Richard had begged Salvatore not to make him do it again, that Richard had said he loved Vincent like a brother, that holding his hand this week had been tearing him apart, that he could not do it. And she watched something crack in Vincent's face, some old grief reopening. And then she told him why Richard was doing it anyway. "His daughter," Clara said gently. "Emily. Salvatore said there was an accident, a hit and run, a boy left in the road. He said Emily did it, and Salvatore made it disappear, paid off witnesses, buried the police report, and he's kept the evidence locked in a safe deposit box for years with her name all over it. That's what he's holding over Richard. One phone call, and Emily goes to prison for manslaughter, and her children grow up visiting their mother behind glass." Clara's voice broke a little. "Richard's not doing this for money, Vincent. He's not doing it for power. He's doing it because a man found the one thing on this earth Richard loves more than you and threatened to destroy it. Salvatore said it himself. He said there's nothing a man won't do to protect his child, not even murder. He said that's the only reason he chose Richard." The study was silent for a long, long time. Vincent stood with his back to her, facing the window, and Clara could see the tension in his shoulders, could see the war being fought inside him. When he finally spoke, his voice was very low. "For a week," he said, "I have wanted to kill Richard Holloway. I have lain in that bed imagining it. The man I loved like a brother poisoned me in my sleep, and every hour since, part of me has been planning how he would die for it. Slowly, painfully, so that he would understand exactly what his betrayal cost." He turned around, and his eyes were wet and furious and lost. "And now you sit there and you tell me he wept. You tell me he begged. You tell me he is being tortured by a monster who owns his child. And that every smile he gave me this week cost him a piece of his soul." He pressed the heels of his hands against his eyes. "Damn you, Clara. Damn you for finding the truth. It was so much easier when he was just a traitor." "I'm sorry," Clara said softly. "Do not be sorry." Vincent dropped his hands. "This is why I sent you, not just to find the plot, to find the truth. Anyone can find a plot. Only you would have knelt at that vent long enough to find the man's broken heart underneath it." He sat down heavily across from her. "The question now is what I do with it." "You could free him," Clara said. Vincent looked at her. "The evidence," Clara went on, leaning forward. "The thing Salvatore is holding over Richard, it's in a safe deposit box. If that evidence disappeared, if it was destroyed, or if Emily was somehow protected from it, then Salvatore would have nothing. Richard would be free. He wouldn't have to kill you. He could turn on Salvatore instead. You wouldn't be fighting your most trusted man. You'd have him back, and you'd have him as a weapon aimed at the person who actually did this to you." Vincent stared at her, and slowly, something kindled in his eyes. "You want me to save the man who poisoned me," he said. "I want you to win," Clara said. "And I don't think you win by killing a broken father. I think you win by taking away the chain around his neck and letting him choose. If Richard's loyalty to you is real, and everything I heard says it is, then the moment he's free, he'll come back to you. And a man who's been forced to betray someone he loves and then gets the chance to make it right. Vincent, there's no more dangerous weapon in the world than that. Salvatore turned Richard's love into a weapon against you. You can turn it back into a weapon against Salvatore, but only if you free him first." Vincent was quiet for a long moment, and then, slowly, a smile spread across his face, and it was not a warm smile, and it was not a kind smile. It was the smile of the most dangerous man in New York seeing, for the first time in a week, a way to win. "You," he said softly, "have a mind that frightens me. Do you know that? You walked into my house 6 months ago carrying a mop, and you are sitting here now having designed a strategy that would take my most experienced men a month to conceive. Salvatore built a beautiful trap, and you have found the one thread that unravels the whole thing." He shook his head slowly. "The evidence, the safe deposit box. If we take that away, the entire structure collapses. Richard turns, Salvatore is exposed, and the man who has spent a year trying to murder me discovers, far too late, that his own weapon has been turned in his hand." "Can you find it?" Clara asked. "The box, the evidence." "I can find anything," Vincent said. "The question is whether I can find it before Tuesday. We have 4 days." He was already moving, already thinking, the boss fully awake in him now, alive with purpose. Salvatore is careful, but a safe deposit box leaves a trail, banks, signatures, access logs. It is exactly the kind of paper Salvatore is too old and too arrogant to think anyone would trace. He stopped and looked at her. "But there is a piece missing. Even if I find the box, even if I destroy the evidence, I need Richard to know it is gone. I need him to understand that his daughter is safe, that the chain is broken, that he is free to turn on Salvatore. And I cannot simply tell him. If I walk up to Richard Holloway and say I know everything, I know about Emily. I know Salvatore blackmailed you, and by the way, I have set you free, and I am wrong about even one detail. Or he panics, or he does not believe me. Then he tells Salvatore, and Salvatore moves the timeline up, and I am dead by morning." He rubbed his jaw. "It has to be done perfectly. Richard has to be approached by someone he trusts, someone who can tell him the truth gently, privately, in a way that he will believe, someone who—" He stopped, and he looked at Clara, and Clara felt her stomach drop because she saw exactly where his mind had gone. "No," she said. "Clara. No, Vincent, you promised. I go in, I find out, I get out, and I'm done. That was the deal. I found out, I got out, I gave you everything. You promised me I could walk away." "I know what I promised," Vincent said quietly, "and I am not ordering you to do anything. I told you, everything you do from here, you do as a free woman. If you want to walk out that door right now, I will have you driven anywhere in the world, with more money than you have ever seen, and you will never hear from me again, and I will find another way, and I will not think 1 degree less of you." He held her eyes. "But you asked me a question the first night. You asked why Richard turned. You would not let it go. You said until I understood what made him do it, I did not understand what I was fighting. And you were right. You are always right." He leaned forward. "So let me ask you something now. Richard Holloway is a good man, being crushed by an impossible choice. He is about to murder someone he loves to save his daughter, and it is killing him. You heard it in his voice. You wept for him in the car, did you not? I can see it on your face." Clara said nothing, but her eyes filled, and that was answer enough. "You are the only person alive," Vincent said, "who knows the full truth of what Richard is going through. My men would approach him like a target. I would approach him like the man he betrayed. But you," his voice gentled, "you would approach him like the only person in the world who understands. You know what it is to love someone and be helpless to protect them. You told me about your mother, about watching her get destroyed by someone she trusted, unable to stop it. Clara, you are the one person who could look Richard Holloway in the eye and tell him you understand and mean it, and he would believe you." he sat back. "But I will not send you back into danger, not again, so I am not going to ask. I am only going to tell you that the choice exists, and then I am going to respect whatever you decide, completely, whichever way it falls." Clara sat in the silence of the study, and she thought about Richard Holloway's broken voice through the vent. "God forgive me, Salvatore. I cannot do it again. I have loved that man like a brother for 20 years. She thought about a father being tortured into destroying everything he loved. She thought about her mother and about being helpless, and about how the whole tragedy of her childhood had been that there was no one at all, who understood, who could have stepped in, who could have said, "I see what is happening to you, and I am going to help." There had been no one for her mother, but there could be someone for Richard. "If I do this," Clara said slowly, and her voice was shaking, "it has to be after you've destroyed the evidence. Not before. I'm not walking up to that man with empty hands and asking him to trust me. When I tell him his daughter is safe, it has to already be true. I won't lie to him. Not about that. Not?" "Agreed," Vincent said quietly. "Completely. I destroy the evidence first. Emily is safe first. And only then, when it is real, when it is done, do you go to him. Not 1 second before. And I do it my way, alone. No men, no threats, no muscle standing behind me. If I show up to a desperate father with a wall of armed men at my back, he'll bolt. It has to be just me, just two people who understand what it's like to be helpless, talking." "That," Vincent said, and there was something in his voice that was almost pain, "is the part I like the least, sending you to him alone. But you are right. Again. As always." He closed his eyes. "God, Clara, I have spent 25 years learning to read people, and I never in my life met anyone who reads them like you. You should be terrified of these people, and instead you are sitting here planning how to save one of them." "I'm plenty terrified," Clara said. "I've just never let being terrified stop me from doing the thing that needs doing. My mother taught me that. It's about the only thing she had left to teach me, by the end." Vincent opened his eyes and looked at her for a long, quiet moment, and something passed between them that neither of them named. "When this is over," he said quietly, "you told me you would walk out of my world and never come back. You made me promise not to look for you." He paused. "I want you to know that I intend to keep that promise, but I also want you to know that it is the first promise I have ever made in my life that I sincerely hope you release me from." Clara did not know what to say to that, so she said nothing. But she held his gaze, and she did not look away, and the silence between them said a great deal. The next 3 days moved fast. Vincent's people worked around the clock, quietly, invisibly, tracing the paper trail Salvatore had been too arrogant to think anyone would follow. And on the second day, they found it. A safe deposit box at a private bank, opened 4 years earlier, in Salvatore's name, accessed exactly twice since. Inside, Vincent's people confirmed through a source at the bank, was a sealed envelope, and the box's access records lined up perfectly with the timeline of a hit-and-run in a quiet suburb 4 years before, an unsolved case, a boy struck and left in the road, no arrests ever made. It was all exactly as Salvatore had said. Getting into the box was the kind of thing Vincent Callahan could do that ordinary people could not. Clara did not ask how, and Vincent did not tell her. She knew only that on the third day, Vincent walked into his study, set a plain envelope on the desk in front of her, and said, "This is it. This is the chain around Richard's neck. This is what has been forcing him to murder me." Clara looked at the envelope. "What's in it?" "Photographs," Vincent said quietly. "A copy of the original police report before it was buried. A signed statement from a witness Salvatore paid off. And a note, in Salvatore's own hand, to himself, documenting the whole thing so he would never forget the details of what he owned." Vincent's jaw tightened. "It is airtight. If this had ever reached a prosecutor, Emily Holloway would have gone to prison, and there is nothing Richard could have done to stop it. Salvatore built himself a perfect leash. He picked up the envelope. "And now I am going to burn it." He walked to the fireplace. He knelt down, and Clara watched Vincent Callahan set fire to the one thing that had turned his most beloved friend into his would-be murderer. Watched the flames curl up and consume the photographs and the report and the note in Salvatore's own hand. Watched the leash burn to ash. "There," Vincent said softly, watching it burn. "Emily Holloway just became free, and she will never even know it. She will never know how close she came to losing everything, or that a Mafia boss she has never met just saved her life by destroying the proof of the worst thing she ever did." He stood, brushing ash from his hands. "Salvatore still has the memory of it, but memory is not evidence. Without that envelope, he has nothing. He cannot send Emily to prison. He cannot prove a thing." He turned to Clara. "The chain is broken. Emily is safe. It is real, and it is done." His eyes met hers. "Now it is your turn. Now you can tell Richard the truth." Clara looked at the ashes in the fireplace, and then at Vincent, and she felt the weight of what came next settle onto her shoulders. In a matter of hours, she was going to walk up to Richard Holloway, the man who had poisoned Vincent, the man who could still, if she said one word wrong, have her killed on the spot, and she was going to try to give him back his soul. "How do I reach him?" she asked. "Alone, somewhere Salvatore's people won't see." "He walks in the garden every evening at dusk," Vincent said. "Alone. He has done it for years. He says it is the only time his mind is quiet." A shadow crossed his face. "Or it used to be. I doubt his mind has been quiet for a single moment this past year." He looked at her. "Tonight, at dusk, he will be in the garden. There are no cameras there, no guards. It is the one place in this house where two people can speak, and no one will ever know." He stepped closer, and his voice dropped. "But Clara, hear me. If this goes wrong, if he panics, if he does not believe you and runs to Salvatore, then everything collapses in an instant, and I cannot promise I can protect you in time. You will be alone with him in that garden. You will be closer to the edge than you have ever been." He searched her face. "Are you certain? Truly certain? Because once you walk out to him, there is no undoing it." Clara thought about Richard's voice through the vent. "God forgive me." She thought about a father drowning, and a hand that no one had ever offered her mother, and the chance, finally, to be the person she had always wished had existed. "I'm certain," she said. And that evening, as the last light drained out of the sky, Clara Bennett walked out into the garden alone, toward the silhouette of the man who had tried to murder the person she was trying to save, carrying nothing but the truth and the desperate hope that it would be enough. Richard stood with his back to her, his shoulders bowed under a weight Clara now understood completely, staring at nothing. She stopped a few feet behind him. She took a breath. "Mr. Holloway," she said quietly. He turned, and when he saw her, his face went white and then confused, and then, slowly, terribly, afraid, because some part of him, some instinct honed by a year of guilt and terror, understood before his mind did that this quiet, invisible woman was not standing in this garden by accident. "You," he said, "the maid, Beckett, from Salvatore's." His voice climbed. "What are you? Why are you? Who sent?" "My name isn't Beckett," Clara said gently. "And nobody sent me, Mr. Holloway. I came on my own. I came because I know. I know about Emily. I know about the accident and the box and what Salvatore's been doing to you." She watched the blood drain entirely from his face, watched him begin to tremble, watched a year of unbearable secret terror crack open all at once. "And I came to tell you that it's over. The evidence is gone. Salvatore has nothing left. Your daughter is safe, Richard. She's free, which means so are you." And Richard Holloway, the most feared administrator of the most feared family in New York, a man who had held Vincent Callahan's hand and lied and poisoned the person he loved most in this world to save his child, looked at the invisible Maid who had somehow uncovered the deepest secret of his life, and his knees buckled, and he began, silently, to weep. Richard wept for a long time, there in the fading light, and Clara let him. She did not rush him. She did not fill the silence with words. She simply stood with him, the way she had stood with Vincent that first night, present and steady, and she waited for the storm inside him to pass. When he could finally speak, his voice was ruined. "How?" he whispered. "How could you possibly know? Nobody knows. Nobody. I have carried this alone for a year. I have not told a living soul. How?" "Because I listen," Clara said gently. "Because I notice the things other people miss. That's all I've ever been good at, Mr. Holloway. And I was in that house on Friday, in the powder room next to Salvatore's study, and I heard every word. I heard him threaten Emily. I heard you beg him not to make you do it again. I heard you say you'd loved Vincent like a brother for 20 years. Her voice softened. "And I heard a good man being tortured into doing the worst thing he could imagine. That's what I heard, Richard. Not a traitor. A father with a gun to his child's head." Richard's face crumpled again. "Does he know?" he asked, and the terror in his voice was absolute. "Vincent, does Vincent know what I did?" "Yes," Clara said. There was no point in lying, and she would not have lied to this man for anything. "He knows everything. He's known for over a week." Richard closed his eyes, and his whole body seemed to collapse inward. "Then I am already dead," he said quietly. Of course he knows. He always knows. He has been playing me all week, holding my hand, thanking me, letting me believe I had fooled him, and all the while." He opened his eyes, and they were empty with resignation. "So this is how it ends. He sent you, the maid, not even a bullet. He sends a cleaning woman to tell me my life is over. A fitting punishment, I suppose, for a man who tried to murder him in his sleep." "He didn't send me to kill you," Clara said. "He didn't send me at all. I came on my own, and I came to save you." Richard stared at her, uncomprehending. "Listen to me," Clara said, and now her voice was urgent. "The evidence Salvatore was holding over you, the photographs, the police report, the witness statement, the note in his own hand, it's gone. Vincent found the safe deposit box, and he took it and he burned it. This afternoon, I watched him do it. Emily's protected now, Richard. Salvatore has nothing left. He can't touch her. He can't send her to prison. There's no proof anymore because it's ashes in a fireplace." She stepped closer. "The chain is gone. You don't have to kill anyone. You don't have to do a single thing Salvatore says ever again. It's over. You're free. Your daughter is free." Richard Holloway stood absolutely still, and Clara watched a year of horror and guilt and impossible pressure war with the things she had just told him, watched him fight to believe it, terrified to believe it, because believing it and being wrong would break him completely. "Why?" he finally managed. "Why would Vincent do that? I poisoned him. I nearly killed him. Why would he save my daughter? It makes no sense." "Because I asked him to," Clara said simply. "And because he understood something once I explained it to him. He understood that Salvatore didn't turn you with greed or ambition. Salvatore turned you with love. He found the one thing you'd do anything to protect, and he used it. And Vincent realized that a man who could be forced to betray someone he loves that much is a man whose loyalty was never actually broken. It was hijacked." She held his gaze. "Vincent doesn't want you dead, Richard. He wants you back. He freed Emily so that you could choose again, not because Salvatore's forcing you, not because I'm asking you, just you, deciding as a free man whose side you're really on." Richard's breathing had gone ragged. 20 years, he whispered. 20 years I served that family. I loved him. Do you understand? I loved Vincent like he was my own blood, And when Salvatore came to me with that box, with those photographs of my Emily, I broke. I told myself I had no choice. I told myself any father would do the same. But every night, every single night, I lay awake and I hated myself because I knew there had to be another way, and I was too much of a coward to find it. His voice cracked. And now you're telling me a maid found it. A maid found the way out that I couldn't find in a year of trying. I didn't find a way out, Clara said. I just refused to stop looking. There's a difference. You couldn't look, Richard, because you were too deep inside the fear. That's what fear does. It makes the walls look solid. But I was outside the walls, so I could see the door. Richard looked at her, this small, quiet, unremarkable woman who had somehow undone in a week what had trapped him for a year. And something in his face changed. The resignation drained away, and in its place came something Clara recognized, because she had seen it in Vincent's face too. She had seen a man remember what it felt like to have a choice. "Where is he?" Richard said. "Vincent, where is he? I have to see him. I have to, God. I don't even know what I'll say, but I have to see him." "He's waiting for you," Clara said. "He's been waiting all evening. He said when you were ready, and only when you were ready, to bring you to him." She paused. "But Richard, I have to tell you the truth about what comes next, because I won't trick you. Salvatore still plans to kill Vincent on Tuesday. That hasn't changed. The only thing that's changed is that now you're free to stand on the right side of it. Vincent isn't asking you to run or to hide. He's asking you to help him end this, to help him stop your uncle before Tuesday comes." She watched his face. "It's dangerous. It could get you killed. Salvatore is not a man who forgives betrayal. So I need you to understand exactly what Vincent's going to ask of you before you decide." Richard was quiet for a moment, and then, for the first time since Clara had walked into the garden, something like strength returned to his ruined face. "For a year," he said slowly, "I have been the weapon that monster aimed at the only family I have left. I have hated every second of it. If Vincent Callahan is offering me the chance to turn that weapon around and drive it into Salvatore's heart instead, then there is nothing on this earth. I want more." His jaw hardened. "Take me to him. Now." Clara led Richard through the house to Vincent's study, and the two men, the boss and the friend who had betrayed him, stood facing each other for the first time since the truth had come out. Clara stood off to the side, invisible again, present again, watching. For a long moment, neither man spoke. Then Richard Holloway, who had served the Callahan family for 20 years, sank to his knees. "I have no words," Richard said, his voice breaking. "There are no words for what I did. You held out your hand to me for 20 years, and I poisoned you. I looked into your eyes, and I lied to you while you thanked me for my loyalty. I do not ask for forgiveness. I do not deserve it. I only ask that you let me spend whatever life I have left making it right. Kill me after if you want. I will not resist. But let me help you destroy Salvatore first. Let me do that one thing before I go." Vincent looked down at the kneeling man, and Clara saw the war in his face, the grief and the fury and the old love, all of it fighting at once. And then Vincent Callahan did something Clara would remember for the rest of her life. He reached down, and he took Richard by the arm, and he pulled him to his feet. "Get up," Vincent said roughly. "Get up, Richard. Callahan men do not kneel, not to me, not to anyone." His voice was thick. "You want to know if I forgive you?" "I don't know. I honestly do not know. Maybe I never will all the way. You poisoned me, and some part of me will never stop feeling that. But," he gripped Richard's arm hard, "I know what Salvatore did to you. I know he found your daughter and put a knife to her future and made you choose between her and me. And I know, because this woman here made me understand it, that no father alive would have chosen differently. You did not betray me because you stopped loving me, Richard. You betrayed me because you loved Emily more, and Salvatore built a trap where those two loves could not both survive." His voice dropped. "That was not your sin. That was his, and we are going to make him answer for it." Richard's face broke completely, and he gripped Vincent's arm in return, and the two men stood there holding on to each other, 20 years of brotherhood cracked and bleeding, but somehow, impossibly, still alive. "Now," Vincent said, stepping back, wiping his eyes, the boss returning to his voice, "we have 4 days, and we are not going to need them. Salvatore is expecting you to kill me on Tuesday. He is expecting a report from you. So we are going to give him exactly what he expects, right up until the moment we don't." He looked between Richard and Clara. "Salvatore's entire plan depends on one thing. It depends on him believing you are still his weapon, Richard. He does not know the evidence is gone. He does not know you have turned. As far as Salvatore knows, everything is proceeding perfectly." A cold smile spread across his face. "Which means we can bring him to us. We can invite him to walk right through my front door, believing he is coming to watch me die. And instead, he will walk into the end of everything he has built." Over the next 2 days, they built the trap. It was Clara who found the final piece, of course, because it was Vincent's plan to lure Salvatore to the estate under the pretext that the second poisoning had succeeded, that Vincent lay dying, and that Salvatore should come claim his prize. But Clara pointed out the flaw. "Salvatore's careful," she said. "You said it yourself. He doesn't dirty his hands. He spent a year staying miles away from every risk. If Richard calls and says Vincent's dying, come quick. Salvatore won't come running. He'll wait. He'll send someone to confirm it first. He'll protect himself, because that's who he is." She thought about it. You can't lure a careful man with a prize. He'll suspect it. You have to lure him with a threat. Something that makes him feel he has no choice but to come himself, right now, in person. "Such as?" Vincent asked. Clara looked at Richard. "Such as you," she said. Richard calls Salvatore panicking. He says it's gone wrong. He says Vincent survived the second attempt, that Vincent is awake and suspicious and asking questions, and worst of all, that Richard thinks Vincent has found the safe deposit box, that the evidence on Emily might be compromised. She turned back to Vincent. "That's the one thing Salvatore can't ignore. His whole leash on Richard depends on that evidence. If he thinks it's at risk, if he thinks his hold on Richard is slipping and everything might come unraveled, he won't send a man to check. He'll come himself immediately because it's the one thing too important to trust to anyone else." She paused. "You don't dangle a prize in front of a careful man. You threaten the one thing he can't afford to lose, then he stops being careful." Vincent stared at her. And then he laughed, a real laugh, full of dark delight. "Richard," he said, "do you understand what has happened to us? We are two of the most experienced men in this entire world at this kind of work, and we are being outthought at every turn by a housemaid from Brooklyn." "I noticed that too," Richard said, and there was something almost like a smile on his ravaged face as he looked at Clara. "A week ago, I wanted her gone from this house because she made me nervous. I told you she was unreliable. I wanted you to fire her." He shook his head slowly. "I have never in my life been so wrong about a person. She is the reason my daughter is free. She is the reason I am standing here a free man instead of dying inside a little more every night. I owe her everything." He looked at Clara directly. "Everything. And I will not forget it. Not for the rest of my life." Clara did not know what to do with that, so she did what she always did. She looked down and she said quietly, "I just did what needed doing." The call was made that night. Clara was not in the room when Richard made it, but Vincent told her afterward that it was the finest piece of acting he had ever witnessed. Richard, who had spent a year drowning in genuine terror, poured all of that real, earned fear into the phone, and Salvatore on the other end heard exactly what he expected to hear, a broken, panicking man whose world was collapsing. And when Richard said the words, "the evidence," "I think he found the box. I think Emily is exposed," Salvatore Callahan went silent for a long, long moment. And then the old man said he would come, personally, the next evening, to handle it himself. The trap was set. Salvatore Callahan arrived at his nephew's estate the following evening, believing he was coming to contain a disaster, to reassert his control over a panicking Richard, and to personally ensure that his year-long plan did not fall apart at the final hour. He came with only 2 men because he did not want witnesses to what he was about to discuss. He walked through the front door of the house he believed would soon be his, into the home of the nephew he had spent a year trying to murder. And Vincent Callahan was waiting for him, alive, standing, perfectly well. Clara watched from the shadows of the adjoining room, invisible as always, as Salvatore's face went through a transformation she would never forget. The confidence, then the confusion, then the slow, dawning horror as the old man realized that Vincent was not dying, that Vincent was not sick, that Vincent was standing in the center of his own study with cold eyes and a faint smile, and that something had gone very, very wrong. "Hello, Uncle," Vincent said quietly. Salvatore's hand moved toward his coat, but Vincent's men were already there, stepping out of the corners of the room, and Salvatore's 2 guards found themselves surrounded before they could so much as reach for a weapon. In seconds, it was over. Salvatore Callahan stood disarmed and alone in the center of the room, an old man whose long game had just collapsed around him in the space of a single breath. "Sit down, Uncle," Vincent said. "We have a great deal to discuss." Salvatore's eyes darted around the room, calculating, and then landed on Richard, who stood at Vincent's side, and Clara watched, understanding wash over the old man's face. "You," Salvatore breathed. "You turned, after everything I held over you. After Emily." His lips curled. "You fool. You think he has really freed you? You think there is any evidence I cannot recreate? Any threat I cannot rebuild? Your daughter is a murderer, Richard, and I am the only reason she is not in a cell, and the moment I walk out of here—" "You're not walking out of here," Richard said quietly, and there was no fear left in his voice, none at all. A year of terror had burned away, and what remained was cold and clear and absolutely steady. "And the evidence is ash. I watched a description of it burn. Emily is beyond your reach now, Salvatore. Forever. The only thing you have left is the memory of what you did, and memory doesn't hold up in front of a prosecutor. You have nothing. You are nothing. You spent a year making me feel like I was helpless, and it turns out you were the helpless one all along. You just didn't know it yet." Salvatore's composure finally cracked, and beneath it Clara saw what had been there the whole time, an old, bitter, grasping man who had spent his entire life wanting what belonged to someone else, and who had been willing to murder his own family to get it. "I should have run this family," Salvatore spat at Vincent. "It should have been mine. You were too young, too soft, too weak, and you took what was mine, and I have spent years." "You have spent years poisoning yourself with envy," Vincent said. "And when that was not enough, you tried to poison me. You took a good man and you tortured him. You threatened a young woman and her children. You did all of it not because I was weak, but because you could not bear that the men chose me over you, that the family chose me over you." He stepped closer to his uncle. "And do you want to know the truth, Salvatore? The reason I am still standing here, the reason your perfect plan failed? It was not my men. It was not my money or my power or anything you spent a year planning around." Vincent turned, and he looked toward the shadows where Clara stood, and for the first time he brought her into the light. It was her, a housemaid, a woman you looked right through in your own kitchen, a woman the entire world decided was invisible. She is the one who saved me. She is the one who found your safe deposit box. She is the one who freed Richard. She is the one who built the trap you just walked into. His voice was quiet and terrible. You lost, Uncle, to the one person you never once bothered to see. And I think there is a justice in that so perfect that I could not have designed it if I tried. Salvatore looked at Clara, truly looked at her for the first time. This small, quiet woman he had passed a dozen times without a glance, and Clara saw in his eyes the exact moment he understood how completely he had been undone by someone he had never even registered as a person. What happened to Salvatore Callahan afterward, Clara did not ask, and Vincent did not tell her. She knew only that the old man was taken away that night, and that whatever justice the Callahan family administered to its own, Salvatore would never again threaten anyone. She made her peace with not knowing the details. Some things, she had learned, were not hers to carry. In the weeks that followed, the Callahan estate changed in ways Clara could feel in the very air of the place. Richard Holloway remained, restored to his position, but a different man than the hollow, haunted figure he had been. The weight was gone from his shoulders. His daughter Emily, who would never know how close she had come to losing everything, was safe. And Richard had gotten to keep both his child and the brotherhood he had thought he'd destroyed forever. He never fully forgave himself, Clara suspected. Some wounds a person carries always. But he had been given something almost no one who does a terrible thing ever gets, the chance to make it right. And he spent every day afterward earning it. And Vincent Callahan changed most of all. He trusted fewer people blindly now. The lesson of Richard had cut too deep for that. But strangely, he valued loyalty more, not less, because he finally understood how rare and how precious the real thing was. He ran his world with a clearer eye and a harder wisdom, and the men who served him found him changed in ways they could not name but could feel. And Clara, the invisible housemaid from Brooklyn, was invisible no longer. She had told Vincent that first week that when it was all over she would walk out of his world and never come back, and she would make him promise not to look for her. And when the day came that it was finally over, truly over, Vincent called her to his study to keep that promise. "You are free to go," he said quietly. "Everything I offered I meant. Money, protection, a new life anywhere in the world, and my promise never to look for you." He was quiet for a moment. "I am a man of my word, Clara. If you want to walk out that door and disappear back into your old life and never see me again, I will make it so, and I will never trouble you. You have earned that 100 times over." Clara looked at him, and she thought about the small apartment in Brooklyn, the late rent, the broken heat, the life of being furniture, of being not seen. She thought about 27 years of making herself invisible because invisible was safe. And she thought about the fact that in this house, with this impossible, dangerous, changed man, for the first time in her whole life, she had been seen. "You told me once," Clara said slowly, "that you hoped I'd release you from that promise. The promise not to look for me." Vincent went very still. "I've been thinking about it," Clara said, "about what I'd be walking back to, and I realized something. My whole life, I made myself invisible because I thought being invisible was the same as being safe. But it isn't. It's just a different way of disappearing." She met his eyes. "I don't want to disappear anymore, Vincent. I spent 27 years being nobody. And then I walked into a room one stormy night and did the one thing that mattered, and somebody finally looked at me and saw a whole person. I'm not ready to give that up. I'm not ready to go back to being furniture." "Then don't," Vincent said, and there was something in his voice she had never heard before, something almost afraid. "Stay, not as staff, not as a maid, as God, Clara. I don't even have the right word for what you are. You are the sharpest mind I have ever known. You are the only person alive I trust completely. You saved my life. You saved Richard's soul. You saw through a plot that would have killed me, and you unraveled it with nothing but your eyes and your heart." He stepped toward her. "You once told me you help anyone who's dying in front of you, rich or poor, saint or sinner, because that's just who you are. And I have spent my whole life surrounded by people who only helped me because they wanted something. You are the only person I have ever met who did the opposite." His voice dropped. "You saw me as a human being when the whole world saw a monster. Stay, and be the person who reminds me I still am one." Clara looked at him for a long moment. "On one condition," she said. "Anything. I don't stop being who I am. I don't become one of you. I don't learn to look through the help or stop noticing the invisible people or forget where I came from. If I stay as me, the maid from Brooklyn who pays attention, because that's the only thing I've got that's worth anything, and I won't trade it away, not for money, not for power, not for anything." She held his gaze. "The day I stop seeing the invisible people is the day I've become exactly the kind of person who couldn't have saved you. So I keep my eyes, I keep my heart, or I walk out that door." Vincent Callahan smiled, and it was the realest smile Clara had ever seen on his face. "That," he said quietly, "is the entire reason I am asking you to stay. Do not ever change, Clara Bennett. The world has enough people who look through each other. It has almost none who truly see." And so Clara stayed. Not as a servant, not as furniture, not as the woman everyone ignored. She stayed as the one person in that whole dangerous world who remembered that every invisible soul carrying a tray or mopping a floor was a whole human being with eyes that noticed and a heart that mattered. She became the conscience of a man the world had written off as heartless, the proof that even in the darkest houses, humanity can survive if just one person refuses to stop caring. The world knew Vincent Callahan as a dangerous man, powerful and feared, surrounded by wealth and secrets. But Clara knew the man behind the reputation, the man who had almost died in his sleep because everyone around him had stopped paying attention. The man whose life was saved not by his money or his power or his army of guards, but by a woman society had decided was worth nothing, who turned out to be worth everything. Because in the end, the truth Clara Bennett proved that Stormy Night was the simplest and most powerful truth there is. The person everyone overlooks is often the only one who sees clearly. The smallest detail, noticed by the right pair of eyes, can change the course of every life it touches. And real loyalty, the kind that saves a life and mends a soul and redeems a broken world, never comes from fear or money or power. It comes, always and only, from the people who choose to care when no one else will. And Clara Bennett had chosen to care. That choice saved a man's life, freed a father, redeemed a family, and proved to an entire world that the one it refused to see had been the one who mattered most all along. That is where her story ends, and that is the truth it leaves behind, whole and unbreakable and true.